Our speaker tonight, Eric Alcoholic, our speaker tonight is Krista. I just had the pleasure of meeting her downstairs and greeting her as she came in. And I know three things about Krista. She looks fabulous tonight. And then another is, she just celebrated 25 years of sobriety, and she's from Clean Air North. So come on up.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Krista, and I'm an alcoholic. I was given the gift of sobriety on April 6th of 1996, and I'm forever grateful for that. So good to be in a real meeting. This is the first time that I have spoken in person in 2 years. I have actually had the privilege of talking quite a bit over the pandemic on Zoom, and I got to tell you that I'm so sick of my story, so tired of my story. I don't want to do it. I'm going to talk about all the other things, so this could be messy. Like, I have a real ironed out, polished story. Come get me afterwards. I'll tell you how to listen to that, but I'm going to talk about other stuff tonight. I will give you a little history, though, so that I have to qualify. I think it's the most important thing that we do here in AA. I am the fifth generation of alcoholics, and they all drank themselves to death. And I'm the first one sober in my family. My parents were from a small little West Texas town called Pampa. They lived down the street from one another, and they went to elementary, junior high, high school. And they dated their whole lives. They graduated from high school, they got married, and they were married for 13 months, just long enough to have me. And they got divorced, and they got remarried almost immediately. And so my mom and my stepdad were the alcoholics, and my real dad and my stepmom were like Ward and June Cleaver. And so, I had these two polar opposite, dynamics. And at my mom and my stepdad's house, my name was Krista, go give me a beer. And being the good little waitress that I was, I would always bring the beer opened, and I'd have a little sip. And sometimes they would get their beers half empty. And then they would say, Krista, go give me a beer and get yourself one. It was just one of the things that happened in alcoholic homes. There's a lot of secrets that go on, and that was one of them. But I knew that I wasn't to go get a beer, for myself when my grandparents were over there, or the neighbors, or other adults. I knew that was, something that I should do in secret. And I remember the little girl Shelly across the street. I remember standing in front of the refrigerator one day when we were about 7, slamming beers. And I remember telling Shelly that if she drank it fast enough, she could feel it tingle down the backs of her arms and her legs. And she could never feel that. And I just thought she wasn't doing it right. So I was always like, chug, 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 open your mouth all the way. You got to really just swallow it whole. And I was always trying to counsel her on trying to get the feeling. Shelly was this, I was so enamored with Shelly. Shelly felt like she knew who she was. She was so connected with the world. And she felt so unafraid and so solid in herself. And I thought, gosh, if I could just get inside Shelly somehow, if I could just climb inside of her and live. I just wanted to chameleonize inside of Shelly and just get a little bit of that on me, because I just felt like an alien. Just nowhere felt good. And I remember sitting my mom down, and I would be like, just tell me who I am. Just tell me what my personality is, and I will go and do that, and I'll be that. And she would look at me like I had 17 heads, because she didn't know who she was. How could she, tell me who I was? And I felt this overwhelming urge to medicate from that feeling, that not knowing who I am, not being centered in myself. I was always, trying to distract from it, or I began this thing that I call chasing fun. I was always trying to chase fun, and the fun that I was currently having was never as good as that fun that was out there. So I was just always running to stand still, and it just began the history of the not enoughness. Just wasn't enough of anything, anywhere, anytime. And there's this great line in this U2 song, and he says, "We were all having the time of our lives except you. You were over there talking about the end of the world. That was me. I could suck the joy out of any room. It was my superhuman power." So, but I didn't go get a beer out of the refrigerator and start drinking it because I was real worried about the shenanigans going on at my house. I was born 28 years old. I just came out exactly like this. I was old and worried. And I remember setting my parents down. I'm about 10, and I'm having a family meeting with them again. And I'm like, listen, you guys have got to stop getting drunk and naked in the front yard. The neighbors, if the cops come over here one more time, I swear to God, we got to turn the stereo off and get to bed. I got to go to the 2nd grade tomorrow, and I'm exhausted. And they'd be like, "You're right. We'll do better. We'll try." But then Friday would come, and I just couldn't help it. And our house was the party house. I mean, my parents were 19 and 20 years older than me, and so they were kids themselves, and so everybody hung out at our house, and it was just a wild drunken brawl all the time. And so I spent most of my childhood thinking, if I can just get out of here, if I can just live through this, it'll all be okay. And it was more of that, if I can just get over there, if my there becomes here, it'll all be okay. And so I graduated, I skated through pretty cleanly, and, because I was trying to chameleonize into the walls. I was just trying to disappear and not make any waves. I didn't want anybody to, notice me. And whenever I turned 16, I skipped a year, and then I started school early. So I graduated high school at 16, and I moved out, and I never went back. And I got a job at the bank, and I was a teller, and I was finally able to drink the way that I always wanted to, because I no longer had them to mirror off of, and the magic started to happen for me. I took a deep breath, and I remember drinking, and I remember as it was coming into my body, I could feel the fear and the shame leaving, and I thought, oh, finally, relief at last. And but it's kind of hard to come by booze when you're 16 years old, out living on your own. And so I was working at the bank in the drive-ups. I was a teller, and this girl came through and with her withdrawal slip, sent it up the tube, and with her driver's license, and she was my height and my hair color and my eye color. And I called down there and I said, ma'am, you did not close your tube well, and your driver's license and withdrawal slip sucked out into the ethers, and I had myself a fake ID. And so, that's whenever it started, and so then I had a new problem, which was I couldn't really afford to drink the way I wanted to drink. And so I started borrowing from my teller drawer just a little bit, and that got dangerous. And so I came up with a new plan, which was I would write myself a check, and I would deposit it into my checking account, and it would double my money for a couple of days until it cleared the system. And it turns out that's called check kiting, and it's a federal offense. So I worked for a federal credit union, and the feds came, and they did a big audit on the bank, and it all kind of came down to me that I was running this big check kiting scheme because I had all my friends doing it, and even my teller supervisor was doing it. We were just spending this money around, and anyway, so they walked me out to my car and asked me to leave, and kind of slapped me on the wrist and said, you are a young baby and you have your whole life ahead of you, and this is kind of a big damn deal. And so I remember driving around the corner to another bank to get a job so I could do the exact same thing again, because that was the only plan I had. And so at the new place, the new teller, trainer, supervisor, whatever, he said, we're all going to go out tonight. You want to go? I was like, sure. He said, well, meet me over at my house and we'll drive together, my apartment. So I got over there, and he sat me down, and he said, and he taught me how to give him an insulin shot just in case he went into a diabetic coma drinking. And I thought, my first thought was, I wonder what would happen to me if I took an insulin shot. Would I go up? Would I go down? Could I drink more? What would happen? And then my second thought was, eureka. He was, this is my guy, an alcoholic that drinks like me, and I can take care of him. I'm in. And so I moved in with him that night. Like you do. And then I had to call my boyfriend and break up, who was off at college. That was awkward. And so our house became the party house, just like it was whenever I was growing up. And you know what I loved about him? I loved that he understood the rules of drinking, which is you never run out, you never go anywhere that they aren't drinking, and drunk stuff doesn't count. And so, we lived like that for a while. And, water meets its own level. And we all the people that were coming over, they all drank like us. And they all knew the rules of drinking too. And we called ourselves the BWC, the Bedwetters Club. And I don't know if any of you have drank so much that you wet the bed, but it's a real magical moment. So everybody that hung out with us were bedwetters, and we had a good time. And one day we were at his grandma's house, and we were over at his grandmother's house on a Sunday, and he stood up and he said, "I have an announcement to make. I'm getting married." And I said, "You are to who?" And he said, "To you." And I was like, okay, because that's how I made major decisions in my life at that time. And so we got married, and I want to back up a little bit, just because, like I said, I'm kind of tired of telling the same old stories. And since we're here with all this magical lighting and I'm with my squirrel friends, I'm going to tell some stories I don't normally tell, and I forgot. So I mentioned that I was born 28 years old, and I was just trying to find anything that would change the way that I feel, and so whenever I was about 10 years old, I would sneak out and steal the car and go pick up my boyfriend, and then we would drive around trying to find somebody with booze or pot or anything, and I got, picked up by the cops, and they're like, "We have your daughter out here with her boyfriend, they're naked, and we don't even know how to write this up. You're terrible parents, come get her." So shortly after that, they sent me to this therapist, and this therapist was like, "You got to go to Alateen immediately." And so I went to Alateen, and water meets its own level. And so a lot of those kids in Alateen, they are budding alcoholics. And so we started skipping those meetings, and we started going to the gay bar because they served minors. And, those drag queens, oh my God, they took care of us. And it was, it was so fun. And that became, my safe place. And so I did a lot of my drinking at the gay bar. A lot, most of it, I would say. And, we would start out, when I got my fake ID, we would go to this little bar, and this is in Amarillo, Texas, and we went to this little bar called Whiskers, but we called it the Crusty Mustache. And, and they served quarter long necks, and so we would stay there for a couple hours, and then we would go to Sassy's, which is where you dance, and then we would end at the Midnight Rodeo, but sometimes we'd go to Bangers, which was this heavy metal bar, and I was the queen of that bar. I'd walk in there, and they'd have my beer and my kamikaze waiting for me. I was like Norm there, and sometimes I would entertain the band, and like you do. And so when I came into AA, we were such a mix, such a variety of people. And so this really felt like home to me because I, had lived that life. So, okay, anyway, back to the story. So we got married, and things started to change for me. You know, my drinking started to change a little bit, and you know, I started to experience the loneliness that they talk about in the Big Book, the loneliness that only an alcoholic knows, and I started to experience, you know, some insanity. And I remember one night I went out with my girlfriends, and we, you know, went to the gay bar. My husband and her husband stayed at home. They were playing video games, and we, you know, picked up this guy, and we were going from Whiskers to Sassy's, and he took something, and it started kicking in by the time we got there, and he went crazy and went upstairs and smashed in the pool ball machine and came down with blood all over his hands, and he's grabbing us, and we got blood all over us on the dance floor, and then he runs out, and somebody tackled him and beat the hell out of him, and we run out there, Alan on codependent, scooping him up, putting him in the car, taking him home, gonna fix him and take care of him. And he gets to the house, and he walks in my living room and hits my husband and runs into the bathroom, locks the door, pulls the mirror off of the wall, destroys the bathroom, runs out, breaks the door, breaks our front door, blood's all over everything. And, you know, this is at the height of AIDS, and we're just like, what? And so I call the cops, and I'm like, I got this guy, and he, you know, destroyed our house. There's blood everywhere, and he ran off down the street. Can you find him and bring him back? He went that way. And the cops are like, yeah, we'll be right there. And I sat there on that curb waiting for them all night long to go bring my bloody guy back to me. And they never came, and I just was sad. But those things, I mean, that was starting to be every weekend. And that felt completely normal and natural to me. And it was just a lot of stuff like that. And the BWC, they started saying things like, y'all are too much. We can't, you know, hang out with y'all. We got to go to work. You know, they're starting to grow up and get lives and, you know, have kids and really get it together. And we're like, you know, turning into some kind of wine and roses offspring. And, you know, those sad Saturday nights at 4 o'clock in the morning, whenever you're listening to Patsy Cline and you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you're just feeling sorry for yourself, crying, just like really that deep self-pity is really sticking. I'm starting to have those on Tuesday at like 7:30, and it's just like, ugh. And I'm also, you know, I'm at work, and I am just staring at the clock. I'm just waiting for 5 o'clock, and it's, you know, it is 4:59, and whenever 5 o'clock, I'm stepping over the threshold, and I'm running to my car, and I am driving 75 miles an hour down to the beer store, to the corner, and I'm pulling into that parking lot. I jump out of my car. I don't even close the door. I run inside, and as soon as I see it ice down in the cooler, I start to feel better before I even get any of it in me. And I get it out, and I open it up, and I'm drinking one up to the counter to pay for it. And they're like, you can't do that in here. And I'm like, stop me. I throw some money at them, and I run out, and I just like that desperation, just like I just needed it. And I am, you know, water meets its own level. So my boss, you know, drinks like me, and I'd moved my way up to investments, and he, whenever the market would close, he and I would go to the, you know, I'd take him to the gay bar. And anyway, and then we were having, everybody at the bank thought that we were having an affair. We weren't. We were just having an alcoholic relationship, you know, just this enmeshed sickness. And we were fighting like brother and sister. And, you know, at least once a week I would quit and storm out and throw a wad of withdrawal slips at him. I'm leaving. And he would follow me to my house, come back, and I would. And anyway, one day his wife called, and I was mad at him, and I was going to tell on him. And she said, hold it right there. She said, I just, before you go on, I just want to tell you that I go to this place called Al-Anon, and I think it could really help you. And I was like, I don't need to go to Al-Anon. I had this therapist one time that told me I should go to Al-Anon, though, and she sent me to Alateen, and she, you know, she really understood me, and I always thought that if I could ever find her again, she could probably help me. And she said, well, what's her name? I said, her name is Sunny Hill. And she said, well, I know her. Here's her phone number. So Amarillo, I mean, it's not that wasn't a stretch. So I call Sunny and I'm like, my name is Krista and you're never going to remember me. But she's like, oh no, I remember you. I absolutely remember you. I didn't have many clients getting arrested at 10 o'clock naked with their boyfriends. I remember you. And she said, but I'm not taking patients. She said, I was sober for a long time and I have started drinking again. And looking back on that, I thought, gosh, what a hard thing to say. She said, but she gave me another therapist phone number, and I made an appointment. That therapist couldn't see me for 2 weeks. And in the meantime, we had a 3-day weekend at the bank. And I don't know about you guys, but I started getting ready for those 3-day weekends about 3 days before. So by the time the weekend come, I'd already been drinking, around the clock, And something happened to me that Saturday night that had never happened to me before. No matter how much I drank, I could not get drunk. And it scared me. And I thought, oh, holy hell. The only thing that has ever worked for me has stopped working. What am I going to do? So I got into a big fight, with my husband at the time. And I'm leaving, I'm packing my stuff, and I throw my wedding ring, and I, get my things. I get the important things. I get the ficus tree and my shoes and the ottoman. Because that's what you need when you're leaving. And I go to my mom's house, and I've got the tree, out the window, and I get to my mom's house, and she happens to be up drinking, at 5 in the morning. And we go in there, and we get it all sorted out, and we figure out that it is his fault. And I'm going to bed, and I took my contacts out in there, and it was 10 in the morning, and I remember the time because I'd had my last drink at 10 in the morning. And man, the things that I had done to try to avoid drinking in the morning, because that means you're an alcoholic. And it was the only thing I wanted to be when I grow up, was not an alcoholic like my mom. Anyway, so I went in there and I was taking my contacts out, and I did not recognize myself in the mirror. I had those sunken black eyes, that swollen face, and I saw my mother looking back at me. And I said that prayer that we all say. I said, God help me. And I put my contacts back in, and I went home to my husband, and I sat him down, and I said, we have a terrible, terrible drinking problem, and we got to go to AA. And he said, you're right, you do. It's terrible. So somehow I didn't drink. That was on Sunday. I didn't drink all day long on Sunday, and I had that therapist appointment that next Monday. And I went in and I sat down and I said, my parents are terrible, terrible alcoholics, and they have just about ruined me. And I could have the very beginnings of a small, tiny, tiny drinking problem. And she said, well, I can't see you till you've been to at least one meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's one starting in 15 minutes. Here's the address. Why don't you scoot on down there and come back tomorrow? And so I just want to put a little caveat here that, years later, she heard me tell that part of my story, and she called me and she said, Krista, I remember that really differently. So I just want to say here that I don't know if any of this story is true, but this is how I remember it, and so this is what I'm sticking to. So I went to my first meeting, and there were 6 grandpas there, and I walked in, and they said, are you new? And I said, yes. How did you know? And they sat down, and they started talking about the way they felt before they drank, the way they felt when they drank, and the way they felt after they drank. And all of the age difference and gender difference and all of that stuff melted away. And I knew that those 6 grandpas knew my secrets. I felt so understood. Like they had these words to these feelings I'd had my whole life. And they felt at peace. they felt happy. They felt like Shelley. They felt tethered to the earth in this way that I had never felt before. And then they talked about incomprehensible demoralization. And then they said that I was the lifeblood of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that they needed me, and that they could not stay sober without me, and that I was the most important person there. And so I went back the next day because they needed me, and I did not know how they were going to stay sober without me. And I was the lifeblood of Alcoholics Anonymous. And man, so I went on Tuesday and Wednesday and on Thursday. And then on Thursday, I brought a little notepad with me because the next day was Friday, and I had never not drank before. And I said, I've been coming here all week, and you guys have not told me how to not drink yet. And so tomorrow's Friday, and I need you to start at the top, leave nothing out, go real slow. And they said, you are going to have to ask a higher power to relieve you of the obsession to drink alcohol. And I go, ooh, what else you got? Because that's silly, and that's never going to work. And they said, well, what do you got to lose? I was like, you know what? I don't got nothing to lose. I've tried a lot of things except that, and I'll just do it. And I mean, I didn't grow up in religion. I didn't have anything against God. I just never considered God at all. It just wasn't part of my psyche. And so I went to the bathroom and I asked God to relieve me of the obsession to drink alcohol. And I went home and I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning for the first time in my whole life without the litany of thinking. I woke up without the hideous 4 horsemen for the first time. All of that shame and all the resentments and all the shoulda, woulda, couldas and all the stuff and replaying all the movies and all the stuff, it was all gone. And I felt peace. And I was like, there's something going on there at that Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going back. And so I went back and I said, okay, what do I got to do? And they said, well, you need to get a sponsor and you need to work the steps. And I said, where are the steps? This is a single-story building. Are they downtown? Is there a special park? Do I need tennis shoes? And they were so sweet with me. I could not read. My brain was so pickled. I couldn't say the word anonymous. I was just like, I was 23 years old. I was a little bit of a blonde ding-dong, but they were so nice. They didn't laugh. They didn't say, oh, God, we got more on us than you got in you. They didn't say any of that stuff. They treated me like a real member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they said, here are the steps right here. They're right here. We've been reading them, every time before the meeting we read them, and you need to get a sponsor, and it needs to be a woman, and call any of us anytime until you get one. There are women that come here, and whenever you see one, won't you ask them to be your sponsor? And they just were kind. They were really kind. And I have to say that the decency of people that I've met in Alcoholics Anonymous have just been, the truth is, it's been, the greatest gift that has ever happened to me, besides being free of alcoholism and having a higher power, the people, the fellowship, you guys, this has just been the greatest ride I've ever had. It's the thing that you dare not miss, and that has been so true. So, this poor woman came in, and I was on her like white on rice, and she, she was perfect, and she started talking to me about habits consistent with sobriety. And, and she was also really kind and really gentle, and she would write down my assignments on these postcards, and they were like movies, black and white movie stars, and it was simple things like wake up in the morning, ask God to keep you sober, read page 86 and 87, at night thank Him. Real, just lined it out, very simple. And, and she took me through the steps, and, the soberer I got, the drunker he got. And, I got sober with a case of beer in the refrigerator, and I only say that because, I wanted to be sober more than I wanted to be drunk. And I threw myself in the middle of, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went to 3 meetings a day. And I got a friend in AA, and she was, so there was 2 women. One of them was my sponsor, and the other one was a woman that came in a few days after me, and she was about 5 years older than my mom, and she was my pal. And she was a lawyer, and she and I would hide under our desk during the day, and we would talk to each other on the phone, and all day long. And I would be like, I feel weird. She's like, I feel weird too. And she goes, I have to go on trial and talk to the judge, and I have never done that sober. I was like, that sounds terrible. Good luck. Let's meet at the meeting. So during all that time, one day I popped my head up from underneath my desk, and there was a guy standing there, and he was I knew him from high school. He's like, what are you doing down there, Krista? Oh, I lost my earring. And he's like, oh, what's this book here? And it was a big book. And I go, oh, somebody left that in the lobby. And he's like, oh, it's got your name and it's got last month's date. Yeah, that's when I found it. Mm-hmm. I wanted him to know who found it. He's like, okay. So about a week passed, and I saw him out there in the drive-ups, and I went out there, and I was like, hey, it's blaring through the drive. Hey, it's Krista. You know that book you found on my desk? That was my book. He goes, yeah, I know. I went to high school with you. I knew it was you. So anyway, I started to change, and I started to get free, and I woke up on a Tuesday afternoon. I came home from work, and nothing had happened that day. We didn't have a big fight. Nothing was really changing, and I sat him down and I said, I really love you, but I love me way too much to live like this. And so I just want to back up a little bit. Whenever I was in the 4th grade, that's the year that you take art and music for the first time, and my art teacher turned in one of my class projects into a national art contest, and I won. I came to school one day, and the principal called my name over the announcements to come to the principal's office, and I thought I was going to get swats. And the TV was there, newspaper reporters. I'd won this big contest, and they put my picture on bulletin boards across the nation, and it was a big deal. And my parents were like, oh my God, look what we did. We made a big, bright, shiny star. Wow, we are so great. And so they enrolled me into college course art classes, and that's how it felt to me. It felt like it was about them. And, looking back on it now, I have so much perspective, and you get that the longer you stay sober. They were trying to support me. It's amazing how I twisted so much things, that even the most generous offers of love, I contorted into something else. I mean, maybe there was some selfishness and stuff going on in there, but they were trying to, give me a good deal. Anyway, so I hated it. I hated being in those classes. I hated the attention. I felt like everybody wanted something from me that I did not have to give. I thought that I was responsible. And what I know about that now is that, I am the steward of a talent, and it's not of me, it's through me, that I am not in charge of that. I'm not responsible for that. I'm only responsible for being an open vessel and letting all that stuff come through me, and not being attached to it or own it. And anyway, so whenever I got sober, all that by the way, I never painted anything else again. And whenever I'll show them. So whenever I got sober, all that creativity started coming up, especially whenever I started to unclog the tube between me and my higher power. Whenever all of that stuff started being, removed from me, all that fear and all that resentment, and I started to climb down into, who God made me to be. And all that creativity just started bubbling up out of every pore in my body, and I was dreaming about paintings every night, and I just was compelled. I was driven. And so I'd gotten a divorce, and I thought, I was working at the bank, and I was about to go get my Series 7. I'd been studying for that test for a long time, and I thought, before I get off into this career for the rest of my life, I'm going to go to Dallas and see about doing something more creative. I mean, I probably won't. be successful because artists are poor. So I'm going to go do that for a year, and I'll come home and take my test. So I get to Dallas, and I go to the Preston group, which a big meeting in Amarillo is 10 people, and I was in that group with 150 people. And I thought it was the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous for the entire Metroplex. And I got real anonymous in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would go in late, I would leave early, and I would pass when it was my turn to share. And things started getting real scary. And one day this girl was on me like white on rice. And she was like, will you be my sponsor? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yes, but I better get one first. So she asked me, and I asked the girl to my left, and we all got sponsors that day. And I didn't keep that sponsor. Shortly thereafter, I found out that there were other meetings, and I started going to this women's meeting over at Lakewood, and there was this woman that was in the meeting, and she didn't know it, but we were having a secret competition, and everything that I would say, she would counter, and then whenever it was my turn to share, I would share at her, and I was trying to win, and then the wheels fell off. And I was in the kitchen talking to her, and I was just like, I've been trying to meditate, and I've been going to the meetings, and I've been doing all the things, and blah 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 blah. And she was like, well, what if you didn't have all those rules? What if you just set all those rules aside for today, and just for today you had 3 rules: don't drink, go to meetings, and have safe sex. I was like, okay, and then I asked her to be my sponsor, and she has been my sponsor for 23 years now. Kathleen told me a story before this that she, not to tell your story or whatever, but we have a friend, whenever you've had sponsors for a long, long time, none of us are going to get out of this alive. And whenever I hear about it, it makes me want to call Christy and break up immediately. I just want to stave off that kind of pain. To have somebody on the inside track with you for that long, somebody that knows you, through and through. She's not my higher power, even though you probably don't believe that right now. But, she's just a girl in AA, and I really do know that. But I think that God will use anything I'm open to give me a message, and He has been her favorite tool for me. And she has said some things and walked with me through some things that have just turned my entire ship in that harbor. I'll call her and I'll be like, Christy, I have gathered all the evidence, and I know that they are out to get me, and I am going to burn this mother down. She'll say, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a really good idea. But can you wait till Friday? It's going to be flammable still on Friday. You can still do it on Friday. Can you just hold off just a minute? Can you just create a little bit of space and a little bit of time for God to get in there and to change your perspective? Just give Him a chance and ask. God helps those who ask. Can you just ask? Can you just reach your little hand up into the universe and just tap into the power that's available to you all the time? Or I'll call her and I'm like, Christy, I just can't feel like this anymore. I'm gonna go, and I drowned 3 kittens this morning, and I'm gonna go sleep with my best friend's husband. And she'll be like, oh, look how cute you are. Look at you just out there managing your own life. It's adorable. She'll go, why don't you run by here first? Why don't you run by here first? We're going to go to the meeting, and, Gary and I, we have dinner reservations, and we're going to go to this party. Come with us. I'm like, what? I can't go with y'all to somebody's party. She's like, come on. She's always done that. She's always been so inclusive. She has been such a model example of Alcoholics Anonymous. She's always been like, we're all going to go out after the meeting, and we're all going to go to dinner, and then we're all coming to my house. Or we're all going to play games, everybody. I'm like, everybody? Even that stinky girl? Yes, everybody. And by the way, you were the stinky girl one time. Don't forget. But, the other beautiful thing about being with somebody that long that really, really knows you is that, she knows my patterns. And she can say, this is what I see. You did it whenever you were in the 4th grade, and you're doing it again with your boss and with your friends. This is, you're recreating the same thing over and over and over again. Do you see it? And she never tells me what to do. She has always allowed me to have my own experience. She has never, there's this great story or parable, I'm sure you all have heard it, but like if you see a butterfly struggling to get out of its cocoon, if you take a scalpel and you cut it free and you help it, it'll die. Because it has to have the experience of getting out on its own. It's developing muscles that it's going to need in the world. And if you do it for them, they die. And so she has never cut me out of my cocoon. She's always been like, I think it's a terrible idea. Go do it and let me know how it goes. She's like, get out there and live. Skin your knees. Go to meetings. Don't drink and have safe sex. But report back and let me know. And, I had the great honor of, the only thing I ever wanted to do was, was not be my mom, not be an alcoholic like my mom, and I was. And the other thing I wanted was to not have to watch my mom drink herself to death. And I had the great honor and privilege of being with my mom while she died. And her death certificate said cancer, but I know that she died of alcoholism. And I remember laying in there on the floor with her, and she was, where the hospice was there and all that. And I remember calling Christy, and I'm like, I've been laying here on this mattress with my mom for 3 days, and she's thrashing around, and it's crazy here. And Christy was like, get out of there. Go take care of yourself. Go to a meeting. Get something to eat. And I was like, absolutely not. You could not sandblast me out of this room. But what happened is that AA showed up. Y'all came to me whenever I couldn't get to you, just like all the other times. I had an art show in New York, which was the biggest thing that had ever happened to me, and my family didn't show up. I had some friends in AA come. Christy and Gary came, and then I turned the corner, and my AA group came and surprised me. You guys have been there at every twist and turn through all of the marriages and divorces and bankruptcies and deaths and all the things, just on and on and on. And this year, I'm trying to not say the P word or the C word, which, 2 years ago, the P word and the C word meant something really different, but now y'all know what I'm talking about. But it's, this is life on life's terms, and this is the thing that's up. So, I got to talk about it. And I've been really challenged to get a much bigger God through all of this. A God big enough that I can lean into during all of this, chaos and all of this division and all of this, I know so much about people's stances on things that I never wanted to know. And, I really, prior to all of this, I was really, backing up 3 years ago, I was finding myself being appalled a lot and really enjoying being appalled. and having to really take a look at that, like what is that, and why do it's just self-righteous indignation. It's the way that I try to defend myself against feeling powerless, and through all of this, I'm feeling it come up again. Wanting to be appalled, and watching others wanting to be appalled, and watching people really dig in. And extracting myself from that, and really getting into the principles. What are my principles? What are the principles of the program? Who do I want to be? Who do I want to be through this? During all of this, we things stopped. Our business kept going like before. It didn't change much, but meetings stopped, going out stopped. We were at home a lot. A lot of the distractions stopped, and I was left with all this time, a lot of time to think, and a lot of time to kind of go in, and I was like, oh no, that wasn't it. The busy wasn't it. The distractions, that wasn't it. That wasn't the problem. There's something else inside of here that is demanding to be looked at, and to be seen, and to be talked about, and like really climbing in there under it and saying, what does the want? What does the wanting want that's under it? And I think it all kind of boils down to that thing that Chuck Chamberlain says, that all problems can be boiled down to one problem, which is a conscious separation from God. And I think that I have a big, fat, beautiful life, and I'm doing a lot of stuff in AA, and I'm doing all of the things I'm supposed to, but I didn't realize that I was using even that to be distracted, even that to be disconnected, even all of wanting to be appalled is a way to be disconnected and distracted, and not centered in who I am. And anyway, so about that time, I started getting calls, and everybody's like, we're home, let's do Zoom, let's do workshops, let's do these big deep dives into, traditions and relationships, and let's do the concepts, and let's do the legacies, and let's do all the stuff. And so I've gotten this, amazing opportunity to do that. And so for about a year and a half, for about 4 hours on Sundays, I have been involved with this little group, and we do this real extensive, development. And what I've had the great honor of, learning about, how I move through the world, and these character defects that are still here, and how they've gone underground, and they've presented in these new ways, and can I be based in my principles? Is my God big enough for that? And so it's been, and I think I'm just like in this process of becoming. I'm becoming something, and I don't really know what it is or where it's going. I have called Christy a few times just crying, and I don't know why. I'm just inconsolable. I don't know what the want wants, and I just feel untethered to the world. And she says the same things that she said in the beginning. Just reach your little hand up and tap into the power that is all around you all the time, and just trust. Try really using step 3, trust. And God is either everything or He's nothing. What is my choice to be? And getting to choose again. And anyway, so I like I said, I've been asked to do a lot of talking and on Zoom, and I've had to make friends with that, and I've gotten to meet a lot of people from across the world, which has been great. I sponsor. I'm very much in the center of the boat in AA. I allow myself to be sponsored. I know a lot of people have sponsors, but they don't call them. I call mine. I allow myself to be sponsored, and I sponsor girls, and I'm at my sponsee limit, and I'm married. I met my husband Steve at a conference in 2012, December No, let me back. I met him in June of 2012 at a AA conference, and we were engaged 8 weeks later. It is a pattern of mine. And we work together and we live together and we are together. And so and especially all this, we were, trapped in the same house together for a minute. And so it was a real, it was good that the traditions and relationships kind of came back into my life. And we were actually on Sundays, we set aside a time to sit down and kind of talk about that and to continue to keep that tube cleared out and the tube between us cleared out and to go over the things that we need to talk about. And I would have never in a million years could have seen what tools I was getting here. The last house on the block. I really came here to get the heat off. I really came here because I thought that, I could tell on my parents and that y'all would go, let's get them. And, what I have gotten instead is this, a life beyond my wildest dreams. On that first day, if you had handed me a snow globe and I could have looked inside there and seen my life today, I would have been amazed. But and I wouldn't have believed it, but if I could feel the way that I feel today, like the way I feel like Shelley, I feel good inside my body. I feel tethered to this world. I feel free. And I'm going to end with my favorite part in all of our literature, and it is the last two paragraphs in the 12 and 12, step 12. If you haven't read step 12 and the 12 and 12 in a while, Bill Wilson, he really saved up all the things, and he just has this beautiful fireworks show. Every page of this is just amazing, but this is my favorite. He says, still more wonderful is the feeling that we do not have to be especially distinguished among our fellows in order to be useful and profoundly happy. Not many of us can be leaders of prominence, nor do we wish to be. Service gladly rendered, obligations squarely met, troubles well accepted or solved with God's help, the knowledge that at home or in the world outside we are partners in common effort, the well understood fact that in God's sight all human beings are important, the proof that love freely given surely brings a full return, the certainty that we are no longer isolated and alone in self-constructed prisons, the surety that we need no longer be square pegs in round holes, but can fit and belong in God's scheme of things. These are the permanent and legitimate satisfactions of right living, for which no amount of pomp or circumstance, no heap of material possessions could possibly be substitutes. True ambition is not what we thought it was. True ambition is the deep desire to live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. I don't get more power the longer I'm here. I'm as powerless today as I ever was. But I get a lot more humble, and I'm humbled to be here. Thank you for my spreading.